When you're down to your last $110, every decision feels like it could be your final mistake. Michael Carson's neck ached as he shifted against the wadded-up jacket serving as his pillow in the bed of his Ford F-150. The November air seeped through the tarp he'd rigged over the truck bed, a makeshift shelter that had been home for 8 months now. He checked his watch, 5:17 a.m. Dawn wouldn't break for another hour, but sleep had already abandoned him, chased away by the constant calculation of survival. Winter was coming, and that thought kept him awake most nights. The truck's heater worked, but running it all night burned gas they couldn't afford. Jason was already awake in the passenger seat, his phone's glow illuminating his face as he tried to catch the weak Wi-Fi signal from the grocery store across the parking lot. At 23, he should have been finishing college, building a career, living his own life. Instead, he was here, trapped in this rolling prison of circumstance with his father. The guilt of that reality sat in Michael's chest like a stone. "Morning, Dad. Staying or going?" Jason's voice carried through the partially open window. Michael pulled on his worn work boots, wincing as his left leg protested the movement. The old injury, a scaffold collapse that shattered his leg in 3 places, had healed mostly, but the limp remained. Enough of a disability to lose his foreman position, not enough to qualify for meaningful benefits. "Gotta move. Manager was eyeing us yesterday." Michael climbed stiffly into the driver's seat, conscious of how his son's eyes tracked the effort it took. They developed a rotation of parking lots to avoid attracting attention. The grocery store on Mondays and Thursdays, the 24-hour fitness center on Tuesdays and Fridays, the library on Wednesdays, and the truck stop on weekends. A routine born of necessity. Jason handed him a granola bar through the center console. "Last one till payday." Michael broke it in half, passing a portion back to his son, who shook his head. "Already ate." The lie hung between them, another small sacrifice in an endless series. The engine grumbled to life, sounding as tired as Michael felt. As they pulled out of the parking lot, headlights swept across a patrol car entering from the other side. Too close. They needed to be more careful. The rising sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as they parked near the day labor pickup site. Dozens of men already gathered, stamping feet against the cold, breath fogging in the chill air. Michael recognized most of them, other casualties of economic downturns, immigration issues, or personal catastrophes. He'd once been on the other side, a construction foreman with a crew of 12 and a respectable salary. Now he was just another desperate pair of hands. "Any jobs posted?" Michael squinted at the bulletin board where contractors posted their needs. 3 listings: landscaping, moving company needs helpers, and construction cleanup. The construction one pays best, $15 an hour cash. "I'll take that one. You try for the moving company." Jason nodded, pulling his jacket tighter against the cold. At 23, his lean frame still carried the remnants of the high school athlete he'd been before life intervened. Michael shuffled toward the group of men waiting for construction work. His Navy training had instilled in him a straight-back discipline that persisted despite everything. But today his leg was particularly painful, forcing him to adopt a more pronounced limp. The foreman, a stocky man with a clipboard, eyed him skeptically. "You with the limp, can you handle cleanup? It's a high-end site, lots of stairs." Michael met his gaze without flinching. 6 years Navy, engineering course. 12 years construction foreman before this. "I can handle it." The man nodded, making a mark on his clipboard. His hesitation had cost Michael the first position in line, but at least he'd made the cut. 7 other men turned away empty-handed, defeat etched into their faces. The work site was a luxury condominium development downtown, all glass and steel rising 30 stories above the street. Michael and 3 other day laborers were shuttled there in the back of a contractor's truck, silent strangers united only by need. The foreman handed out brooms, trash bags, and instructions with equal terseness. 5th through 8th floors. Clear all construction debris. Anything usable goes in the salvage pile, everything else down the chute. 10 hours, lunch break at noon, go. The day stretched endlessly. Michael's legs screamed with each trip up and down the stairs, but he kept pace with the others. Pride wouldn't feed him, but neither would getting fired for slowing down. By mid-afternoon, his hands were raw and his back spasmed with each bend and lift, but the floors were steadily clearing of drywall scraps, bent nails, and packaging materials. During a water break, Michael stood at the eighth-floor window, looking out over the city he could no longer afford to live in. From this height, he could almost see their old neighborhood, the modest three-bedroom where they'd lived before everything collapsed, before Sarah got sick, before the medical bills devoured their savings, their home, their future. Movement in the glass reflection alerted him to someone's approach. A tall man in an expensive suit stood watching him, flanked by the site manager and a woman with an iPad. Michael recognized the posture of authority immediately, the confident stance of someone who'd never worried about their next meal. "What do you think of the view?" The suited man's voice carried the smooth assurance of wealth. Victor Harrington. Michael had seen his face on billboards around town. Real estate developer, city council member, self-proclaimed visionary. These units start at $1.2 million. Quite the investment opportunity. Michael turned back to his broom. Beautiful view. The terse reply wasn't what Harrington expected. The developer's eyes narrowed slightly as he took in Michael's worn clothing and weathered appearance. "You don't seem impressed." Harrington's tone carried an edge now. "I've seen better, from aircraft carriers in the Arabian Sea. Served my country for 6 years." Michael hadn't meant to engage, but something about Harrington's entitled expectation of deference pricked at wounds still raw from his fall from middle-class security. "A veteran?" Harrington's expression shifted to what he probably thought was respectful interest, but landed closer to condescension. "And now you're—" The gesture toward Michael's broom completed the thought more eloquently than words could have. "Now I'm cleaning up after those who never served anything but themselves." Michael immediately regretted the words. He needed this job, couldn't afford to antagonize people who could ensure he never worked in this town again. To his surprise, Harrington laughed. "Spirited. I like that in a man, even one who's—" The pause spoke volumes. Between opportunities. The site manager looked uncomfortable, clearly wishing this interaction would end. Harrington reached into his pocket and extended a business card. "If you ever need real work, my company has a veterans program. Charity cases, mostly, but it keeps the press happy." Michael didn't take the card. "I don't need charity, Mr. Harrington. Just fair pay for honest work." He turned back to his task, feeling Harrington's stare boring into his back. The message was clear. In Harrington's world, Michael was already invisible. A cautionary tale at best. The rest of the workday passed in a blur of aching muscles and grim determination. When the foreman handed him $120 cash at day's end, 10 hours at the promised rate, no breaks deducted, Michael felt a small spark of victory. One more day survived. Jason was waiting in the truck at their designated meeting point, his own earnings clutched in hand. Got the moving job. 8 hours, $96. "How'd you do?" Michael showed him his payment. They both did the math silently. $260 total, plus the $28 they had saved from last week. Enough for grandiose food and maybe one night in a cheap motel where they could shower properly and sleep in real beds. A luxury they permitted themselves once every few weeks. As they drove toward Meredith's diner, their usual haunt on payday, Michael caught Jason staring at his phone with unusual intensity. "What is it?" "Storage unit auction tomorrow, Unit 47. "That's our old unit, isn't it?" The number hit Michael like a physical blow. Unit 47. He had rented that storage unit 7 years ago when Sarah's brother died unexpectedly. Uncle Thomas had been a tech engineer, brilliant but secretive about his work. When he passed, his belongings had gone to Sarah, and after she died, Michael had kept them in storage, meaning to sort through everything when life calmed down. Life never calmed down. The storage fees eventually became impossible to pay. "I thought that was gone." Michael's voice came out rougher than intended. "The auction's at Bridget's facility on Industrial Boulevard." Jason's words carried an unspoken question. Michael understood what Jason wasn't saying. The storage unit held the last physical remnants of their old life. Photos, documents, Jason's childhood belongings, items that had belonged to Sarah. Watching strangers buy it would hurt, but maybe there would be the closure in seeing that chapter finally end. "We can go watch." Michael didn't promise more. With 244s to their name, bidding wasn't an option. Some memories couldn't be bought back. The diner was quiet when they arrived, the dinner rush not yet begun. Elaine Meredith herself was wiping down tables, her gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, wearing the same pink uniform she'd worn for 30 years. Michael had done some electrical work for her last winter when the diner's aging wiring started acting up. She'd insisted on paying him, though he'd have settled for meals. My favorite customers. Elaine's smile was genuine as she ushered them to their booth in the corner. Meatloaf special today. You boys hungry? The question was rhetorical. She already knew the answer. Just coffee, Elaine. We ate already. Michael's pride spoke before his stomach could. She gave him a look that said she knew he was lying. Coffee's on the house, but I made way too much meatloaf. It'll just go to waste. Health department won't let me serve it tomorrow. You'd be doing me a favor. Michael's pride wanted to refuse, but his stomach won the argument. If you're sure. His capitulation earned a satisfied nod. Within minutes, heaping plates appeared before them. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. Real food, hot and plentiful. Michael ate slowly, savoring every bite, watching Jason do the same. Heard there's work at the Henderson farm. Elaine slid into the seat across from them. Winter prep. Good pay. Couple weeks steady. Michael nodded gratefully at the lead. Elaine had a network of small business owners who passed work around to people they trusted, a system more reliable than the day labor lottery. As they ate, Michael noticed Jason's attention captured by an elderly man at the counter, nursing a coffee and reading a newspaper. Following his son's gaze, Michael recognized Leo Peterson, owner of the local pawn shop where they'd sold most of their possessions, one by one during Sarah's illness and the aftermath. I didn't know he came here. Jason's voice was low, a mix of emotions coloring the observation. Leo had been fair when most weren't, offering reasonable prices and occasionally even buying back items for them when Michael's fortunes temporarily improved. Small town, everyone ends up at Elaine's eventually. Michael watched as Leo caught their gaze and nodded in recognition. There was no shame in the acknowledgement, just the simple respect of men who understood survival's cost. After dinner, they drove to the library to use the computers before closing time. Jason quickly found the storage auction listing, confirming the details for the next day. While his son researched, Michael checked job boards and apartment listings, a ritual that almost always ended in frustration. Today was no different. Rents remained far beyond their means, even for the most modest accommodations. Without a permanent address, most employers wouldn't consider him for anything beyond day labor. And without steady employment, no landlord would rent to them. A perfect trap. As closing time approached, Michael found Jason staring at a faded photo of their old house, pulled from a real estate listing. It had sold again last year, the price nearly doubled since they'd lost it. The modest colonial where Jason had grown up, where Sarah had planted rose bushes along the fence, where Thomas had visited for Sunday dinners, all of it transformed into just another appreciating asset for someone else. You still have that coin? Jason's question seemed to come from nowhere. Michael reached into his pocket, feeling the weight of the Navy Challenge coin, a gift from Captain Wilson after Michael's engineering team saved a dozen lives during a catastrophic equipment failure aboard the USS Lincoln. The coin had survived when almost everything else was sold or lost. Never leave without it. Michael placed it on the table between them. The emblem gleamed under the library lights, a reminder of a time when his skills mattered, when he'd been someone who could make a difference. Captain always said, as long as you have this, you have a way forward. Jason touched the coin briefly. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Michael watched his son, seeing shadows of Sarah in the determined set of his jaw. At 23, Jason carried burdens no young man should have to bear, yet somehow maintained a resilience that sometimes left Michael in awe. They spent the night in the truck stop parking lot, joining a scattered community of long-haul truckers, RV travelers, and others living on the margins. The facility offered 24-hour bathrooms and a sense of safety in numbers. As they prepared for sleep, Michael caught movement outside. 3 young men circling their truck, evaluating. Stay inside. Michael's voice was calm but firm as he reached under the seat for the tire iron he kept there. Before Jason could protest, Michael was outside, standing straight despite his leg, the tire iron held casually at his side. Can I help you, gentlemen? The question carried decades of authority, first as a petty officer in the Navy, then as a construction foreman. The young men hesitated, clearly not expecting confrontation. Just looking for a light, man. The tallest of them spoke with forced casualness, but his eyes kept darting to the covered truck bed where Michael and Jason stored their few remaining possessions. Don't smoke. Move along. Michael didn't raise his voice, but something in his stance, the military bearing he'd never lost, made the message clear. This wasn't an easy target. After a moment of tension, the young men drifted away, muttering excuses. Back in the truck, Jason's expression mixed concern with something like pride. You shouldn't have risked it. They could have been armed. Michael secured the doors before answering. Predators target the weak. Show strength. Most will find easier prey. It was a harsh lesson, one of many he'd never wanted to teach his son. The tire iron returned to its hiding place, a reluctant acknowledgement that their world required such precautions. Morning brought a weak sun and temperatures that hinted at early snow. They showered at the truck stop, paying $12 for the privilege of hot water and privacy, an expense Michael justified as necessary before the storage auction. Appearances mattered, even when you had nothing. The storage facility parking lot was already filling when they arrived at 1:30 p.m., a dozen vehicles ranging from professional auction hunters with cargo vans to curious locals looking for bargains. Michael parked at the edge of the lot, studying the gathering crowd. What's the plan? Jason's question acknowledged the impossibility of bidding, but left room for something more than passive observation. We watch. That's all we can afford to do. Michael's hand unconsciously sought the coin in his pocket, a gesture Jason had come to recognize as his father gathering strength. As they walked toward the crowd, Michael spotted Bridget, the storage facility manager, standing near the auctioneer with her clipboard. She was in her late 50s, with practical clothing and a no-nonsense demeanor that had always treated Michael with respect, even when he'd fallen behind on payments. She saw them approach and her professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing genuine concern before she nodded in acknowledgement and looked away. The auctioneer's voice carried across the parking lot, amplified by a portable speaker system. Michael and Jason stood at the back, partially hidden behind a cargo van. Michael didn't want to be recognized, didn't want Bridget to feel worse about what she had to do. Unit 43 went first. Furniture, boxes, restaurant equipment. A man in a company polo shirt won at $320. Unit 44 contained mostly clothes and household goods, selling for $150. Unit 45 held tools and sporting equipment, garnering $475. Unit 46 contained electronics and small business inventory, selling for $890. Then came Unit 47. Michael's heart hammered as the auctioneer approached the familiar orange door. Bridget stood nearby, her expression professionally neutral, but Michael saw her glance toward the crowd as if searching for him. The lock was cut, and the door rolled up with a metallic screech. The crowd collectively stepped back. Water damage, obvious and extensive. The concrete floor was stained dark with moisture. Cardboard boxes had collapsed into soggy masses, their contents spilled and ruined. The smell of mildew wafted out, and several bidders wrinkled their noses in disgust. Well, folks, the auctioneer's enthusiasm dimmed perceptibly. We've got some water damage here. Looks like a roof leak got to this one. He stepped inside, moving boxes with his boot. Each ruined item felt like a small wound to Michael. Photo albums destroyed, Jason's childhood toys waterlogged, dishes wrapped in newspapers that had disintegrated into pulp. Not much salvageable here. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Waste of time." Another agreed. The professional buyers were already drifting toward the next unit. But then the auctioneer moved deeper into the unit, and Michael saw them. 3 objects in the back corner, wrapped in heavy-duty plastic sheeting, sitting on a wooden pallet that had kept them elevated above the water damage. The plastic was intact, sealed tight, completely dry. Now what do we have here? The auctioneer examined the bundles without unwrapping them. 3 items, well protected. Could be something, could be nothing. As is, folks, you know the rules. The crowd murmured uncertainly. The bundles were oddly shaped, roughly rectangular, but with irregular contours, each about 2 feet long. Let's start the bidding at 25. The auctioneer announced. No hands went up. Come on, folks, 3 mystery items properly stored. Someone take a chance. 20? A woman in the front raised her hand tentatively. 20, thank you. Do I hear 25? Leo, the pawn shop owner Michael had seen at the diner, raised his hand. $25. Michael's mind raced, 244s in his pocket, enough to survive another week, maybe two if they were careful. Enough for gas and food, and that one night in a motel Jason had been hoping for. But those three bundles, they had survived when everything else had been destroyed. They'd been placed on a pallet, wrapped carefully, protected intentionally. Thomas had been meticulous about his work. If he'd gone to that much trouble to preserve something, maybe it mattered. 30, the woman bid again. 35, Leo countered. Michael's hand moved before his brain could stop it. 50. Jason's head whipped toward him, eyes wide with disbelief. The crowd turned to look at the speaker. The auctioneer brightened at the new interest. 50 from the gentleman in the back. Do I hear $55? Leo studied Michael for a moment, then looked back at the unit. $60. Michael's heart pounded. $60 was too much. They needed that money. This was insane, but something in his gut, the same instinct that had kept him alive in the Navy, that had helped him solve engineering problems others couldn't, told him this mattered. $75. Michael's voice was steadier than he felt. Jason gripped his arm painfully. Dad, what are you doing? Trust me, Michael whispered, though he wasn't sure he trusted himself. Leo hesitated, calculating. He glanced at the water-damaged unit again, at the three mysterious bundles, weighing risk against potential reward. Hundar, the crowd murmured. Hunt for a water-damaged unit was steep, even with the protected items. Michael felt Jason's fingers digging into his arm. They had 244s. If he bid $110, they'd have 134 left. Not enough for the motel, barely enough for food and gas. $110, Michael said. The crowd went quiet. Leo frowned, studying Michael more carefully now. Recognition flickered across his face. He knew Michael from the pawn shop, knew he was living in his truck, knew he couldn't afford to waste money on gambles. Leo shook his head and waved his hand dismissively. He was out. $110, going once, going twice. The auctioneer scanned the crowd for any last-minute bids, sold to the gentleman in the back for $110. Michael's legs felt weak. He'd just spent nearly half of everything they had on a storage unit full of water-damaged junk and 3 mystery bundles. Jason stared at him, a mix of disbelief and concern etching his features. Dad, please tell me, you know what you're doing. I don't, Michael admitted. But Uncle Thomas protected those items for a reason. They waited as the bidders dispersed, some grumbling about the waste of time. When the crowd thinned, Michael approached the auction table where Bridget stood with her paperwork. She looked up as he approached, and her professional mask cracked. Michael, I didn't know you were here. I'm so sorry. I gave you as much time as I could, but I know you did more than you should have. I'm grateful. She looked relieved that he wasn't angry. You bid on it? Yeah. $110. He pulled the cash from his pocket, counting it out carefully. His hand trembled slightly as he placed the bills on the table. Bridget processed the payment and handed him a receipt and the new lock and key for the unit. You have 48 hours to clear everything out. We'll get it done today. She hesitated, then said quietly, I hope there's something worthwhile in there. You deserve some good luck. Michael managed a small smile. Thanks, Bridget. He and Jason walked back to Unit 47. Standing at the threshold felt surreal. This space had held pieces of their family, and now it was just wreckage and mystery. They stepped inside, the smell of mildew stronger here, Michael's boots squelching on the damp concrete. Jason began sorting through the ruined boxes, salvaging what little could be saved. Dad, look. Jason held up a photo album. The cover was water-stained and warped, but he opened it carefully. Some pages were stuck together, others had dissolved completely, but in the middle of the album, a cluster of photos had survived, protected by plastic sleeves and the layers of paper around them. Michael took the album with shaking hands. There was Sarah, young and smiling, holding infant Jason. There was Jason at 5 years old, missing his front teeth. There was their old house. There was Thomas at a family barbecue, laughing at something off camera. I thought these were gone forever. Jason's voice was thick with emotion. Michael couldn't speak. He held the album against his chest, feeling the weight of memories he'd thought were lost. After a moment, he set the album carefully in the truck bed and returned to the unit. Time to see what Thomas protected so carefully. The three bundles sat on their pallet, dry and intact. Michael pulled the first one toward the door, where the light was better. The plastic was thick, industrial grade, sealed with professional packing tape. Whatever was inside had been wrapped with care and intention. He pulled out his pocket knife and carefully cut through the tape and plastic. Inside was a device unlike anything Michael had seen in civilian life. Sleek, angular, made of carbon fiber and lightweight alloys. Retractable rotors folded against the body, ports and sensors dotted the surface. On the side, a label, Nexus Tech Industries, Prototype Series Alpha, Unit 01, Confidential. Michael stared at it, his engineering background immediately recognizing the sophistication of the design. This wasn't a consumer product. This was advanced technology, possibly military grade. "What is that?" Jason asked, leaning over his shoulder. "I don't know, but I think we need to find out." They unwrapped the other two bundles in the truck bed, not wanting to leave anything valuable visible in the storage unit. Each contained an identical device, sleek, sophisticated, and tagged with the sequential numbers, Unit 02 and Unit 03. Michael examined them carefully, his engineer's mind cataloging details. The construction was remarkable, lightweight but clearly durable, with components he recognized from military applications. The retractable rotors suggested these were drones, but far more advanced than anything he'd seen in commercial markets. "We need to look up Nexus Tech Industries." Jason was already pulling out his phone. They sat in the truck cab, Jason typing rapidly while Michael studied the devices. The afternoon sun slanted through the windshield, illuminating dust motes and highlighting the contrast between their worn clothing and the sophisticated technology now in their possession. "Got something." Jason read from his screen. Nexus Tech Industries, founded 2012, specialized in autonomous drone technology. They had military contracts, worked on classified projects, but he paused, scrolling through information. They went bankrupt in 2019. Legal disputes over patents, mismanagement, government contract cancellations. What happened to their assets? Supposedly liquidated. Court-ordered auction of all equipment and intellectual property. Jason kept reading, his eyes widening. "Dad, there are forum posts about these prototypes, drone enthusiasts, tech collectors. They talk about Nexus Tech's Alpha series like it's the Holy Grail." "What do you mean?" Michael peered at the phone screen. Jason turned toward him. A discussion thread from 6 months ago contained dozens of posts debating the fate of Nexus Tech's prototype drones. People think they were destroyed or lost in the bankruptcy. The technology was years ahead of commercial drones. Autonomous AI, advanced navigation, proprietary sensor arrays. If these are authentic, Jason scrolled through more posts, his hand trembling slightly. Estimates range from $500,000 to $2 million each. The number hung in the air between them, too large to feel real. Michael looked at the three devices in the truck bed, then at his son's shocked face, then back at the devices. That can't be right. These were just sitting in storage. Uncle Thomas worked in tech, didn't he? What if he worked at Nexus Tech? Michael's mind raced through memories of his late brother-in-law. Thomas had been private about his work, citing non-disclosure agreements and security clearances. He'd worked for several companies over the years, always in specialized engineering roles. Michael had never asked many questions. People in that world often couldn't talk about their jobs anyway. "We need to verify this before we get our hopes up. Who do we ask?" Michael posed the question, mind still reeling from the implications. Jason thought for a moment. "The university engineering department. Someone there might be able to tell us what we have." They spent the rest of the afternoon clearing out the storage unit, salvaging what little remained undamaged. Besides the photo album, they recovered a few documents in waterproof pouches, some of Jason's childhood items in plastic totes, and a metal box containing papers Michael would examine later. By 5 o'clock, they'd loaded everything into the truck and returned the key to Bridget. The three drones, carefully rewrapped, lay hidden under a tarp in the truck bed. The university campus was quiet on a Tuesday evening. Michael parked near the engineering building, and they carried one of the wrapped drones inside, looking for anyone who might help them. A maintenance worker directed them to the third floor, where a professor was still in her office. Professor Samantha Wilson, according to the nameplate. Michael knocked hesitantly. Yes? A woman in her late 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes looked up from her desk. I'm sorry to bother you, Professor. We have something we'd like you to look at if you have a moment. It's a technical question. She studied them. Their worn clothes, nervous expressions, the wrapped object Michael carried. What kind of technical question? We found this in a storage unit. We think it might be a drone, but we're not sure what kind or if it's worth anything. Her curiosity appeared piqued. Let me see. Michael unwrapped the device on her desk. Professor Wilson leaned forward, her casual expression shifting instantly to intense focus. She reached for a pair of glasses and examined the drone closely, not touching it at first, just observing. Where did you say you found this? A storage unit auction? It belonged to my late brother-in-law. She picked up the drone carefully, turning it over, examining the ports, the sensors, the construction. Her fingers traced the Nexus Tech label. Do you know what this is? We were hoping you could tell us. Professor Wilson set the drone down and looked at Michael with an expression somewhere between amazement and concern. This is a Nexus Tech Alpha Series prototype. I consulted on a project adjacent to this program 6 years ago. These drones represent some of the most advanced autonomous technology ever developed. The AI systems, the sensor arrays. She paused. These were supposed to have been destroyed. Are they worth anything? Michael asked, barely breathing. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Worth anything? Each of these, if they're functional, could be worth well over $1 million to the right buyer. But her expression grew serious. There could be legal complications. Nexus Tech's bankruptcy was messy, patents disputed, ownership unclear. If word gets out that you have these, you'll have lawyers, corporations, possibly even government agencies knocking on your door. Michael's hope deflated slightly. So we can't sell them? I didn't say that, but you need legal representation before you talk to anyone else. Don't post about this online. Don't show it to collectors. Don't mention it to anyone until you understand your legal position. We can't afford a lawyer. Michael's admission felt like another failure. Professor Wilson considered this. Do you have any military service history? Navy, 6 years, engineering corps. There was a hint of pride in his voice, a remnant of the man he'd been. There are veteran legal services, pro bono attorneys who help with complex cases. Let me make some calls. She pulled out her phone. What's your name? Michael Carson. This is my son, Jason. She nodded and stepped into the hallway to make her call. Michael and Jason waited, the drone sitting innocently on the desk between them. This is really happening, Jason whispered. Don't get excited yet. She said there could be legal problems. Michael tried to dampen both their expectations. But Dad, even if we only get half of what they're worth. I know. Michael put a hand on Jason's shoulder. But we've learned not to count on good things, haven't we? Professor Wilson returned. I have a name for you, Lawrence Bennett downtown. He's a patent and intellectual property attorney who does pro bono work for veterans. I explained the situation generally, no specifics. He can see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Michael took the card she offered. Thank you, Professor. I don't know how to. Just be careful. These drones could change your life, but they could also bring you problems. Don't trust anyone who makes immediate offers or pushes you to make quick decisions. Understand? Yes, ma'am. They rewrapped the drone and left campus. In the truck, Michael sat with his hands on the steering wheel, processing everything. Where do we sleep tonight? Jason asked. Michael checked his wallet. 130's left, not enough for a motel after paying for gas to get around town. Same place as last night. Jason nodded, disappointment flickering across his face, but not surprise. They'd been dreaming about a motel room, hot showers, real beds, but even with millions potentially sitting in the truck bed tonight, they'd still be sleeping in a parking lot. Dad, Jason said as Michael started the engine, do you think this is real? That we might actually... I don't know, Kev. I've learned not to trust good news until it's already happened. But driving through the darkening streets, heading toward their usual parking spot behind the 24-hour fitness center, Michael allowed himself a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, life was about to hand them something good. The Navy Challenge coin in his pocket felt heavier than usual. a reminder that he'd solved impossible problems before. Maybe this was just another puzzle to work through, one with much higher stakes. They slept poorly that night. Michael kept waking, checking to ensure the tarp still covered the drones in the truck bed, listening for any sounds that might indicate someone was tampering with their vehicle. Jason tossed in the passenger seat, unable to find a comfortable position, his mind clearly racing with possibilities. At dawn, a sharp tap on the window jolted Michael awake. He reached instinctively for the tire iron, but froze when he saw a man standing outside the driver's window. Not cops, not security, something worse. The man wore a dark jacket with no identifying features, his face expressionless. Michael lowered the window a crack. "Can I help you?" His voice remained steady despite the alarm bells ringing in his mind. The man leaned closer, speaking just loud enough to be heard. "We know what you found yesterday. My employer is interested in making a private arrangement, a superior alternative to whatever you're planning." Michael's blood ran cold. How could anyone know already? "I don't know what you're talking about." Michael's denial sounded hollow even to his own ears. Jason was now fully awake, tension radiating from him. The man smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Let's not play games, Mr. Carson. The Nexus Tech prototypes. Very valuable to the right people. Very dangerous to the wrong ones." He slipped a business card through the window crack. "Call this number by noon with a price. After that, things get complicated." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked to a black sedan idling nearby. As the car pulled away, Jason grabbed the card. No name, just a phone number. "Dad, how did they know?" Michael started the truck with shaking hands. "I don't know, but we need to move. Now." As he pulled out of the parking lot, a glint of metal caught his eye. The corner of one of the wrapped drones was visible where the tarp had been partially lifted. Someone had been examining their find while they slept. They drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, taking random turns, watching for any sign of being followed. Finally, Michael pulled into a busy gas station. "We need to get these somewhere safe before our meeting with Bennett." Michael's mind raced through options. None of them good. Their possessions were few enough to carry in the truck, but now included items worth millions. Items dangerous enough to attract immediate attention. As he filled the Vitatic tank, watching traffic with newfound paranoia, Michael noticed a black sedan similar to the one from earlier morning, circling the block. They were being followed. "Get in the truck. We're leaving." Jason obeyed without question, sensing the urgency in his father's tone. Michael pulled out quickly, cutting across traffic, earning angry honks. The sedan appeared in his rearview mirror, maintaining distance but definitely following. Michael made a sudden turn into a narrow alley between commercial buildings, accelerating through it onto a parallel street. The maneuver bought them seconds at most. He needed a plan, a destination, somewhere to hide 3 extremely valuable pieces of technology before someone took them by force. The truck rattled across a set of train tracks, bouncing violently. Jason braced himself against the dashboard. "Dad, where are we going?" Michael checked the rearview mirror again. The sedan had reappeared, closing distance. He made another sharp turn, tires squealing. "Elaine, we're going to Elaine's. The diner?" Jason's confusion was evident, but Michael didn't have time to explain. He navigated through side streets and back roads, using every trick he'd learned driving delivery trucks during his post-Navy years. Finally, he pulled behind Meredith's diner, parking next to the dumpsters where the truck wouldn't be visible from the street. "Stay here. Watch for that car." Michael grabbed one of the wrapped drones and hurried to the rear entrance. He knocked urgently. After a moment, Elaine appeared, surprised to see him at the service door so early. "Michael, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I need your help. Can I store something here for a few hours? It's important and it's complicated." Elaine studied his face, then the wrapped package in his arms, and nodded without further questions. "Supply closet, back corner. No one goes in there but me." Michael thanked her with a nod and hurried inside, carefully placing the drone behind stacks of paper supplies. He returned to the truck for the second and third units, repeating the process while Jason kept watch. Finally, with all 3 drones secured, Michael approached Elaine again. "I can't explain right now, but we might be in trouble. If anyone asks about us or about packages, never saw you, never saw anything." Her firm response carried the confidence of someone who'd weathered her own storms. She patted his arm. Now go do what you need to do. Your things will be safe here. Michael checked his watch. 8:15 a.m. 45 minutes until their appointment with Bennett. We need to clean up before meeting a lawyer. The nearest truck stop was 10 minutes away. They might just have time for quick showers if they hurried. As they pulled away from the diner, Michael caught sight of the black sedan turning onto the street 2 blocks down. He took the opposite direction, forcing himself to drive normally despite the urge to flee. Without the drones in their possession, they were temporarily safer, but the clock was ticking. Someone knew what they had found, and that knowledge was infinitely dangerous. When they arrived at the law office at precisely 9:00 a.m., freshly showered but still in their worn clothes, Michael felt the weight of their situation fully for the first time. They were homeless veterans with nothing but a truck to their name, yet somehow they'd stumbled upon technology worth millions. People were already coming after them, and they had no idea whom to trust. Lawrence Bennett's office occupied a modest suite in a downtown building. The reception area was simple but professional, with framed credentials and military service plaques adorning the walls. The attorney who greeted them was in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and the erect posture of a former military man. Mr. Carson, Mr. Carson. Professor Wilson speaks highly of you. Please come in. Bennett led them into his office, gesturing to chairs across from his desk. Michael noticed the Marine Corps memorabilia displayed prominently, a kindred spirit from a different branch. So, Professor Wilson mentioned you've found something interesting. Tell me the story. Bennett's direct approach was refreshing. Michael explained everything: Thomas's death, the storage unit, the auction, finding the 3 drones, the mysterious visitor that morning. Bennett listened without interruption, taking notes occasionally. And where are these drones now? The attorney's question was casual, but Michael recognized the strategic importance. Somewhere safe. Not with us. Bennett nodded approvingly. Smart move. From what you've described, these could be worth substantial sums to the right buyers. But there are legal complications we need to address first. Like what? Jason leaned forward, eager for answers. Ownership, for one. Your uncle may have acquired these legitimately. Many engineers keep prototypes of their work. But if he took them without authorization, or if they're still covered under patent protections or classified status, we'll need to establish clear chain of custody and legitimate possession. Otherwise, you could be selling stolen property. Michael felt his hope diminishing. He wouldn't have taken them without permission. Thomas was honest, careful. If he protected these drones, he had a legitimate reason. I'm not questioning his character, Bennett assured him. I'm mapping potential legal challenges. When the bankruptcy trustee learns these drones exist, and they will learn eventually, they'll claim they should have been part of the liquidated assets. We need documentation proving otherwise. I have a lot of Thomas's papers from the storage unit. Haven't looked through it yet. Michael remembered the metal container they'd salvaged. Let's do that now. Michael retrieved the box from the truck. Back in Bennett's office, they opened it carefully. Inside were folders, USB drives, and a sealed envelope with Sarah's name written on it in Thomas's handwriting. Michael's hands shook as he picked up the envelope. His late wife's name, written by her dead brother, addressed to someone who would never read it. Jason moved closer, both of them staring at the envelope as if it might explain everything. Go ahead, Bennett said gently. Open it. Michael broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper dated March 2018, 2 months before Thomas died. The letter began simply, Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you need to know what I've protected for you. Michael's voice wavered as he read aloud. Thomas explained that he'd worked as a senior engineer at Nexus Tech Industries, that he'd seen the bankruptcy coming months before it happened, and that certain assets would be destroyed or lost in legal battles that had nothing to do with their actual value and everything to do with corporate egos and mismanagement. I've secured 3 alpha prototypes, the letter continued. They're legally mine. I purchased them through proper channels when the company began liquidating non-essential assets. I have the receipts, the transfer documentation, everything you'll need to prove ownership. But the timing is important. Patent disputes will take years to resolve. Don't try to sell these until the legal landscape clears. When it does, these drones will be worth a fortune. I'm leaving them to you, Sarah. So you and Michael and Jason will have security. Keep them safe. Keep them hidden. When the time is right, they'll change your life." The letter ended with expressions of love and hopes that Sarah would never need to read it, that he'd be able to give her the drones in person someday. Michael set the letter down, unable to speak. Jason's eyes were wet with unshed tears. Bennett picked up the letter carefully. "This changes everything. He purchased them legitimately. If we can find the documentation he mentioned." Michael sorted through the folders in the box: employment records, tax documents, and then a folder labeled Alpha Acquisition. Inside were receipts dated January 2018, showing Thomas's purchase of 3 prototype drones for $15,000 total, a liquidation price as Nexus Tech began its collapse. Transfer of ownership documents signed by a Nexus Tech executive and notarized, everything legal, everything documented. "There it is," Bennett said, satisfaction in his voice. "This is your proof of ownership. Your uncle bought these fair and square before the bankruptcy filing. They were his property, transferred to your wife through inheritance, and then to you when she passed." "So we can sell them?" Michael asked, hardly daring to believe it could be that simple. "Yes, but carefully. Word is already spreading. These drones are legendary in certain circles." Bennett leaned back in his chair. "Here's what I recommend. Don't respond to any unsolicited inquiries. Don't show these to collectors or small buyers. We approach major corporations, aerospace companies, defense contractors, tech giants, and we let them compete for the privilege of acquiring these. We structure the sale to protect you legally and financially. We do this right, and you'll get maximum value." "How long will that take?" Jason asked, voicing the question Michael was thinking. "Weeks, maybe months. But you'll get millions instead of thousands. Worth the wait?" Bennett's expression was sympathetic but firm. Michael thought about the 134 in his wallet, the truck they'd been living in for 8 months, the winter coming. Waiting months sounded impossible, but accepting lowball offers from the wrong buyer would be equally foolish. "We can wait," he said, "if you think that's best." "I do." And Michael, Bennett's expression grew serious. "Once we start making inquiries, your life is going to change rapidly. Media attention, pressure from multiple parties, people offering advice you didn't ask for. You'll need to stay grounded. Can you do that?" Michael touched the Navy Challenge coin in his pocket. "I've handled pressure before." "Good." Bennett's smile was genuine. "Then let's change your life." As they left the law office, Michael felt a strange mixture of hope and terror. They had legitimate ownership of technology worth millions, but also people already hunting them, with only a lawyer they'd just met standing between them and potential disaster. The black sedan was nowhere in sight as they walked to the truck, but Michael knew they hadn't seen the last of it. When sometimes you're one decision away from ruin, other times you're one discovery away from salvation. The trick is knowing which decision leads where. Michael climbed into the driver's seat, the weight of the Navy Challenge coin in his pocket reminding him of all he'd survived already. Maybe this time, just this once, they'd caught a break that wouldn't break them in return. Bennett worked fast. Within 3 days, he'd authenticated the drone's provenance, verified Thomas's employment history at Nexus Tech, and prepared a comprehensive package documenting legitimate ownership. Michael and Jason retrieved the drones from Elaine's diner at dawn, moving them to a secure storage unit Bennett had arranged under his firm's name. No more truck bed storage, no more vulnerability. By the end of the first week, Bennett had made discreet inquiries to 4 major technology companies. The response was immediate and overwhelming. TechWing Solutions, an aerospace manufacturer specializing in commercial drones, called within hours of receiving Bennett's prospectus. Their CEO, Marcus Davidson, wanted a meeting. 2 days later, Stratford Dynamics, a defense contractor, reached out with an expression of serious interest. Then came inquiries from CyberNav Systems and Horizon Robotics. Michael's phone began ringing constantly with unknown numbers. Journalists who'd somehow caught wind of the story, technology bloggers wanting exclusive interviews, forum users who'd connected dots from Jason's earlier research. Bennett instructed them to say nothing, refer all calls to his office, and maintain absolute silence about the drone's location. Not everyone took the hint. Michael and Jason returned to their truck after a day labor job to find the passenger window shattered, glass scattered across the seat. A note had been left on the dashboard. We know what you have. Sell it to us or lose everything. No signature, no contact information, just a threat. The tire iron under the seat suddenly felt inadequate against the forces aligning against them. Bennett offered a solution the next morning. Stay at my guest house, small cottage behind my main property. Furnished, secure, completely private, no charge. Michael's pride bristled at the charity, but one look at Jason's exhausted face silenced his protest. 8 months in the truck had drained them both. The cottage was modest, one bedroom, a pull-out couch, tiny kitchen. But after living in a vehicle, it felt palatial. Real walls, a door with a lock, a bathroom with a shower that didn't require tokens, a refrigerator, a bed. That first night, Michael stood in the bedroom doorway watching Jason sleep on an actual mattress, a pillow under his head, and felt something break loose in his chest. His son deserved this, deserved so much more than sleeping in truck cabs and showering at truck stops. We're going to make this right, Michael whispered to the darkness. The following Monday brought their first serious offer. TechWing Solutions invited Michael and Jason to their Seattle headquarters, sending business-class flight tickets. Bennett accompanied them, briefcase full of documentation. The flight terrified Michael. He'd flown in military transport during his Navy years, but never in a commercial jet, never in seats this comfortable, never with flight attendants offering drinks and hot towels. Jason kept glancing at him, making sure he was okay. TechWing's headquarters occupied a modern glass building downtown, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces. The CEO, Marcus Davidson, mid-40s with the polished confidence of inherited wealth, greeted them personally. Expensive suit, practiced handshake, perfect teeth that never quite reached his eyes. They were led to a conference room overlooking Puget Sound. Lunch was catered, sushi, which Michael had never eaten, and sandwiches, which he gratefully chose instead. Jason tried the sushi, making faces that suggested he wasn't impressed. Davidson's presentation began with TechWing's history, their market position, their vision for commercial drone applications, graphs showing projected growth, videos demonstrating their current product line, all building to their interest in Nexus Tech's Alpha series. These drones represent a generational leap in autonomous technology. Davidson gestured toward the sleek prototype they'd brought for demonstration purposes. The AI systems alone are worth millions in development savings. The sensor arrays, the flight control algorithms, everything about them is years ahead of current market offerings. With your 3 prototypes, we could accelerate our product development by 36 months. What are you offering? Bennett cut through the sales pitch with practiced precision. Davidson smiled. $1.2 million for all 3 units. Transfer closing within 2 weeks. Michael's breath caught. $1.2 million, life-changing money, enough to solve every problem they had. But Bennett's expression didn't change. We'll consider your offer. We have other meetings scheduled. Davidson's smile tightened slightly. I should mention we're prepared to move quickly. Other buyers will require more due diligence, more legal review. We can close fast. Speed isn't our primary concern. Bennett remained impassive. Fair value is. The meeting ended cordially but coolly. In the elevator down, Michael turned to Bennett. $1.2 million, that seems low, Bennett finished. They know these drones are worth more. They're hoping you'll take the first serious offer out of desperation. He looked at Michael carefully. Are you desperate enough to accept less than fair value? Michael thought about the truck, the parking lots, the 8 months of struggle. Yes, he was desperate, but he'd also learned patience. No, we wait for better. The words came easier than he'd expected. Good, because I've got 3 more companies wanting to meet with us. The competing offers arrived within days of each other. Stratford Dynamics proposed $1.5 million with a 5-year consulting contract. CyberNav Systems countered at $1.8 million all cash. Horizon Robotics offered $2.3 million plus royalty agreements on any products developed using the drone technology. Michael and Jason sat in Bennett's office reviewing the proposals, trying to understand complex legal language about licensing rights, non-compete clauses, and intellectual property transfers. The Horizon offer looks best on paper, Bennett explained, but the royalty structure is complicated. Payments contingent on product success, which may never materialize. Stratford's consulting contract is valuable, steady income for 5 years, but locks you into exclusivity. CyberNav's cash offer is clean, simple, immediate. Which would you take? Michael asked, overwhelmed by options after months of having none. That's not my decision. Bennett leaned back. What matters most to you? Maximum payout? Long-term security? Quick resolution? Michael looked at Jason, who'd been unusually quiet. What do you think? Jason hesitated. The consulting contracts interest me, not just for the money, but... He paused, gathering his thoughts. We'd have real careers, not just a one-time payment, but actual work, something to build on. Michael felt pride swell in his chest. Jason was thinking long-term, thinking smart. You're right, that matters. But before they could decide, complications emerged. Bennett received a letter from Nexus Tech's bankruptcy trustees legal team. They'd learned about the drones. Someone had leaked information, probably from one of the companies Michael had met with, and were now claiming the prototypes should have been included in the original asset liquidation. They want 60% of any sale, Bennett said, his jaw tight with frustration, claiming fiduciary duty to Nexus Tech's creditors. But Thomas bought them legally, Jason protested. We have the documentation. I know and will fight this, but it complicates everything. The companies making offers will get nervous. Some might withdraw. Others will lower their bids, knowing legal battles could freeze the sale for years. Michael felt familiar dread settling in his stomach. Of course something would go wrong. Of course lawyers and bureaucracy would try to take away their chance at a better life. He'd experienced this before during Sarah's illness, when insurance companies denied claims and collection agencies hounded him despite having done everything right. How long could this take? Months, maybe years if the trustee pushes hard enough. Michael stood, walked to the window, stared out at the city below. People going about their lives, unaware that 7 floors up, a man's future was being decided by legal technicalities and corporate interests. Jason joined him. We'll figure this out, Dad. We're not alone this time. We have Bennett. We have documentation. We're right. Being right doesn't always matter, Michael thought, but kept the bitter observation to himself. Bennett made calls, negotiated, pushed back against the trustees' lawyers. Days stretched into a week. The media caught wind of the dispute, and suddenly Michael's story was everywhere. Local news, national technology blogs, even a segment on a cable news program about storage unit Treasure Spark's legal battle. A journalist named Sheldon Gray from a major technology publication called repeatedly, finally reaching Michael directly. I want to tell your story properly. Gray's voice carried an unusual sincerity. Not just the drones, but your journey, the homelessness, your son, the struggle. Give me an exclusive interview, and I'll make sure the public understands what's at stake. Michael's instinct was to refuse. Privacy felt precious, especially now, but Bennett suggested the interview might help. Public sympathy can pressure the trustee to negotiate reasonably. If people understand you're a homeless veteran fighting corporate interests, the court of public opinion matters. The interview took place in Bennett's office, neutral territory with professional surroundings. Gray was thorough, respectful, asking about Sarah's death, the medical bills, losing the house, living in the truck, about Thomas's gift, the storage auction, the drone's discovery, about Bennett's pro bono representation, and the companies competing to buy the technology. What do you want people to know? Gray asked as the interview concluded. Michael thought carefully. That systems fail people. That sometimes doing everything right still leads to losing everything. But also, he glanced at Jason, that family matters, that second chances exist, that we're still here, still fighting, still hoping. The article published 2 days later under the headline, Homeless Veteran Fights Corporate Giants for Family Legacy. It spread rapidly across social media, generating thousands of comments, shares, and expressions of support. The response surprised Michael. Messages poured in from other veterans, from people who'd experienced homelessness, from families struggling with medical debt. Some sent small donations despite Michael's protests. Others simply shared their own stories, finding connection in his struggle. A hashtag emerged, #JusticeForMichael. It trended briefly on social media, amplified by advocates and sympathetic public figures. The pressure worked. Within a week, the bankruptcy trustee's lawyers contacted Bennett with a settlement offer. 25% of the final sale, Bennett reported, down from their original 60% demand. They'll acknowledge your ownership, drop their objections, and the sale can proceed. 25% still felt like losing, but Michael recognized it as pragmatic compromise. And if we refuse, years in court, mounting legal costs, uncertainty that will scare away buyers. This is the best deal we'll get. Michael agreed to the settlement. With the legal obstacle removed, the companies renewed their interest. But now a fifth player entered, Vanguard Aerospace, a defense contractor with deep pockets and government connections. Victor Harrington sat on their board of directors, a fact that made Michael instantly wary. Their offer stunned everyone. $3.9 million, plus consulting contracts for both Michael and Jason. $150,000 annually for Michael as technical advisor, $80,000 for Kevin as project liaison. This is the one, Bennett said after reviewing the terms. Real money, real careers, long-term security, benefits, retirement plans, professional development, everything you need. Michael studied the contract, his engineering background helping him understand the technical language. Vanguard wanted his expertise, recognized his Navy experience, saw value beyond just the drones. They were offering him a career, not just a payout. And Jason would have a career too, a path forward, a foundation to build on. What do you think? Michael asked his son. I think Uncle Thomas would be proud. And Mom too. That night in Bennett's guest cottage, Michael and Jason talked until late about accepting Vanguard's offer, about what came next, about the future that suddenly seemed possible. We should get an apartment, Jason suggested. Nothing fancy, just somewhere to live while we figure everything out. A house? Michael countered. Small, but ours. No landlords, no lease worries. Permanent. Jason smiled. A house sounds good. They found a rental the next day, a small 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood available immediately. First month's rent and security deposit totaled $1,800. Michael had exactly $2,000 saved from recent day labor jobs and Bennett's generous loan. The apartment was modest, slightly worn, but clean and safe. Their first night there, Michael made dinner, spaghetti, nothing fancy, and they ate at a real table in a real kitchen. This is nice, Jason said quietly. Yeah, Michael agreed, it really is. The closing with Vanguard Aerospace was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Bennett spent those days finalizing contracts, coordinating with Vanguard's legal team, ensuring every detail was perfect. Michael and Jason settled into their apartment, adjusting to the luxury of walls and privacy and warmth. 1 week before closing, Jason was organizing their belongings, sorting through items salvaged from the storage unit, deciding what to keep and what to discard. The 3 drones sat carefully wrapped on the kitchen table, waiting for their transfer to Vanguard. Jason picked up one of the original plastic bundles, intending to flatten it for recycling. Something about the weight felt wrong. He'd handled these bundles multiple times, knew how they should feel. This one was heavier than it should be. He examined it more carefully, running his hands along the thick plastic sheeting. There, a slight irregularity in the bottom corner. He grabbed scissors and carefully cut away the outer layer. "Dad," Jason called, his voice tight. "You need to see this." Michael emerged from the bedroom where he'd been reviewing consulting contract details. "What's wrong?" Jason had cut away more of the plastic, revealing a hidden compartment in the base of the wrapping. Inside was a 4th drone, smaller than the others, different design, wrapped in additional protective layers. Michael's engineering instincts immediately recognized this was something else entirely. The construction was even more sophisticated than the other 3 units. Military-grade materials, sealed ports suggesting classified electronics, and the labeling, Project Peregrine, Michael read aloud, his voice dropping to a whisper. Do not liquidate. Congressional oversight required. They stared at the drone, both understanding simultaneously that they just stumbled into something far more serious than valuable technology. Jason grabbed his laptop, typing frantically. Project Peregrine. There's got to be information somewhere. The search results were sparse, but damning. Project Peregrine had been a classified domestic surveillance program active from 2015 to 2017. Controversial, accused of constitutional violations, congressional investigation, program officially terminated. All equipment ordered destroyed under federal oversight. This drone shouldn't exist, Jason said. According to this, every Peregrine unit was supposed to be destroyed. Michael examined the drone more carefully. Serial numbers indicated it was a prototype, possibly the only one of its kind. The seals on its data port suggested they'd never been opened. Whatever information it contained was still inside. "Call Bennett," Michael said, "right now." Bennett arrived within the hour, his usual composure cracking when he saw the fourth drone. "This changes everything. This is classified government technology. Possession alone could be a federal crime." "We didn't know it was there," Jason protested. "Doesn't matter. Intent isn't relevant with classified material." Bennett photographed the drone from every angle, documented its markings, and pulled out his phone. "We need to contact the FBI immediately. Full disclosure, claim complete ignorance, cooperate entirely." "The Vanguard deal," Michael began, concern evident in his voice, "is probably over." Bennett confirmed his fears. "Once the government learns about this, they'll claim all 4 drones present national security concerns. They'll seize everything, and we'll be lucky if we're not prosecuted." Michael sank into a chair, feeling his future collapse again. Of course this would happen. 1 week from financial security, and instead they'd found evidence of something that could destroy them. "Why did Thomas have this?" Jason asked quietly. Michael reread the letter his brother-in-law had written. When the time is right, the phrase took on new meaning now. Thomas hadn't just been protecting valuable technology. He'd been protecting evidence. He was a whistleblower, Michael said, the realization dawning. He documented something illegal, saved proof, intended to reveal it when he could do so safely. Bennett nodded slowly. "That's my read, too. This drone probably contains evidence of constitutional violations, government overreach, illegal surveillance. Your brother-in-law preserved it. So what do we do?" "Exactly what I said. Contact the FBI, full disclosure." But Bennett hesitated. "We also contact civil liberties organizations. If this drone contains evidence of government wrongdoing, there might be whistleblower protections available. We need to be smart about how we handle this." The FBI meeting happened the next day. 2 agents, Douglas Palmer and Morgan Chen, met them at Bennett's office. Palmer, tall with a military bearing, approached the situation with immediate suspicion. Chen, younger with a more analytical demeanor, seemed genuinely interested in the technology. Michael showed them the 4th drone, explained how they'd found it, provided complete transparency. Chen examined the drone carefully. Project Peregrine was shut down for good reasons. Serious constitutional concerns. If this unit contains operational data or surveillance records, it's extremely sensitive. "Are we in trouble?" Jason asked, the question weighing on all their minds. "For finding it?" "No," Palmer's voice carried a hard edge. "For keeping it once you knew what it was, that would be a problem. But you're reporting it immediately, which speaks to your intentions." He looked at Michael with narrowed eyes. "Your brother-in-law worked on this program?" "I don't know for certain, but it seems likely." The agents conferred quietly. Palmer made a phone call, speaking in low tones. When he returned, his expression was grave. "We need to take custody of all 4 drones. National security protocols." "What about our sale to Vanguard?" Michael asked, though he already knew the answer. "That can't proceed, not until we've completed our investigation and cleared the technology for private transfer." "Could take months." Michael's heart sank. Months. Back to uncertainty. Back to waiting. Back to struggling. But Chen added, "However, if this drone contains what we think it contains, evidence related to ongoing oversight investigations, there may be compensation available. Whistleblower provisions, rewards for information leading to accountability. We can't promise anything, but you wouldn't be left empty-handed." Bennett stepped forward. "My clients will cooperate fully, but we want assurances they won't face prosecution, and we want fair treatment regarding the other 3 drones which have no classification issues." "Understood. We'll need formal statements, complete documentation, and custody of all 4 units." "But, Mr. Carson," Palmer looked at Michael directly, "your brother-in-law did something brave. Preserving evidence of government overreach takes courage. We'll honor that by treating you fairly." The story broke 2 days later, despite attempts at discretion. Hidden drone could expose government surveillance scandal, read the headlines. Media descended on Michael's apartment building. Reporters called constantly. Camera crews waited in the parking lot. Congressional staffers contacted Bennett. Two separate House committees wanted Michael to testify about how he discovered the drone, what Thomas had told him, what he knew about Project Peregrine. Michael felt overwhelmed, crushed by the weight of unwanted attention and political controversy. He just wanted to sell some drones, rebuild his life, give Jason opportunities. Now he was caught in a national scandal involving classified technology and government accountability. "I can't do this," Michael told Jason one evening, staring at his phone as another journalist called. "This isn't what I signed up for." Uncle Thomas trusted Mom to handle this. Mom trusted you. Maybe this is what we're supposed to do. Finish what he started. I'm not a political person. I'm not an activist. I'm just a guy trying to survive. Maybe that's exactly why you should testify. You're real. You're honest. People will believe you. Michael looked at his son, seeing maturity and wisdom he hadn't fully recognized before. When had Jason grown up? When had he become someone Michael could lean on? "Okay," Michael said finally, "we'll see this through, together." The congressional testimony was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Michael had 5 days to prepare, 5 days to transform from a man who'd been sleeping in his truck 2 months ago into someone who could speak coherently before Congress, cameras, and the nation. Bennett connected him with Natalie Reeves, a civil liberties lawyer who specialized in whistleblower cases. They briefed him for hours, explaining the political landscape, the questions he'd likely face, the traps to avoid. Don't speculate. Stick to facts. Don't let hostile questioners bait you into saying more than you know. Michael took notes on a yellow legal pad, his handwriting cramped and messy. He crossed out sentences, rewrote them, tried to find simple language that conveyed truth without sounding rehearsed. Jason helped him practice, playing the role of various committee members, some sympathetic, others aggressive. "Mr. Carson, isn't it true you're profiting from classified technology?" "No, sir. I found these drones in a storage unit. I reported them immediately when I understood their significance. But you were planning to sell them for millions? The other 3 drones, yes. They weren't classified. My brother-in-law purchased them legally. The 4th drone, Project Peregrine, I reported that to the FBI as soon as I discovered it." Jason nodded approvingly. "Good. Stay calm. Stick to facts. Don't get defensive." The media attention intensified. Documentary crews captured the preparation process. Journalists wrote profiles exploring Michael's journey from homelessness to congressional witness. Support poured in from veteran organizations, civil liberties groups, and ordinary citizens who saw Michael as an everyman caught in extraordinary circumstances. But not everyone was sympathetic. Some commentators questioned his motives, suggested he was exploiting classified information for personal gain, implied Thomas had been a traitor rather than a whistleblower. The accusations stung, but Bennett advised ignoring them. Don't engage with critics. Don't defend yourself in the media. Save everything for your testimony. That's where truth matters. 2 days before the hearing, Elaine visited their apartment, bringing a casserole, homemade rolls, and a fierce hug that nearly broke Michael's composure. "The whole town's proud of you," she said. "You're standing up for what's right. That takes courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified." "That's what courage is, being terrified and doing it anyway." She pressed a small bag into his hands. "For luck," from everyone at the diner. Inside were cards, notes of encouragement, small gifts, a keychain from Leo, a card from Bridget, a photo of the diner staff holding a banner that read, "We believe in Michael." Michael's eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. "Tell them thank you. Tell them," his voice broke. "Tell them I'll try not to let them down. You couldn't disappoint us if you tried." The night before the testimony, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat in the apartment's small living room, reviewing his notes for the 100th time, trying to memorize facts that kept slipping through his anxious mind. Jason found him at 2 o'clock in the morning, staring at the legal pad. "You're going to do great, Dad. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make Thomas look bad? What if I destroy any chance we have at selling those drones?" Jason sat beside him. "Then we figure it out, like we always do. Together." Michael looked at his son, 23 years old, sitting in an apartment they could only afford because of Bennett's generosity, facing an uncertain future because Michael had gambled on a storage unit. But Jason wasn't complaining, wasn't blaming, was simply there, steady and supportive. "I'm proud of you," Michael said. "In case I don't say it enough, I know, Dad, and I'm proud of you too." They flew to Washington on Tuesday afternoon. Bennett accompanied them, along with Natalie Reeves, who'd briefed Michael on constitutional law and surveillance oversight. The Capitol building was overwhelming. Michael had seen it in photographs and news broadcasts his entire life, but standing before it in person made him feel impossibly small. Marble steps, towering columns, the weight of history and power concentrated in stone and symbolism. Inside was worse. Echoing hallways, important people moving with purpose, security checkpoints, the constant reminder that he didn't belong in this world. They were led to a waiting room outside the committee chamber. Other witnesses sat nervously: a former Nexus Tech executive, a civil liberties advocate, a government oversight investigator. Michael didn't speak to them, didn't make eye contact, focused on controlling his breathing. Bennett reviewed key points one final time. "Remember, you're not on trial. You're helping an investigation. Be honest, be direct, be yourself. What if myself isn't good enough?" The question escaped before Michael could stop it. "It will be." Bennett's confident response steadied him. At 10 o'clock a.m., a staffer called Michael's name. Time to go. The walk to the witness table felt eternal. The committee room was packed. Journalists, spectators, committee members arranged in a semicircle on an elevated platform. Cameras pointed at the witness chair like weapons. Bright lights made Michael squint as he was sworn in, his hand trembling slightly as he raised it. "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." The committee chairman, an older man with gray hair and a kind face, began with a statement thanking Michael for appearing voluntarily, acknowledging his military service, expressing sympathy for his hardships. "Mr. Carson, can you tell us in your own words how you came to possess these drones?" Michael took a deep breath and began. He told the story simply: the storage unit auction, finding the 3 wrapped drones, learning about Nexus Tech, discovering the 4th drone with Jason's help. His voice steadied as he spoke, the facts providing structure to contain his anxiety. Questions followed, some straightforward, seeking information, others hostile, implying wrongdoing. Michael answered each carefully, never speculating, always returning to what he knew for certain. A senator from the opposing party pressed him aggressively. "Mr. Carson, you expect us to believe you just happened to find classified technology worth millions? That you weren't trying to profit from stolen government property?" Michael met the senator's eyes. The man's name was Robert Chandler, a senior member of the Intelligence Committee with a reputation for defending surveillance programs. His hostility seemed personal, targeted. "Sir, I didn't know the 4th drone existed until a week ago. I reported it to the FBI within hours of discovering it. As for the other 3 drones, my brother-in-law purchased them legally before Nexus Tech's bankruptcy. I have documentation proving ownership. I'm not trying to profit from anything stolen. I'm trying to provide for my son and honor my family's legacy." Chandler wasn't satisfied, but other committee members looked sympathetic. A congresswoman from California asked about Michael's homelessness, his struggles with the VA system, the failures that had left a veteran living in his truck. Michael answered honestly, describing the 8 months in parking lots, the difficulty finding work with an injury and no permanent address, the shame of watching Jason sacrifice his education to stay with him. "And now," the congresswoman said gently, "you're here testifying before Congress about surveillance overreach and whistleblower protection. How does that feel?" "Overwhelming, ma'am. I never wanted to be involved in anything political. I just wanted to rebuild my life. But my brother-in-law did something important. He preserved evidence of wrongdoing. If testifying here honors his memory and helps ensure accountability, then I'm glad to do it." The room fell quiet. Michael had spoken from the heart, and the sincerity resonated. The testimony continued through the afternoon. Technical questions about the drone's specifications, which Michael answered drawing on his engineering background. Questions about Thomas's character, which Michael defended passionately. Questions about the bankruptcy trustee's claims, the competing offers from corporations, the legal battles he'd faced. During a recess, Michael noticed a man watching him from the gallery. Tall, military bearing, expressionless. Their eyes met briefly before the stranger turned away. Something about him triggered Michael's instincts. This wasn't just another spectator. When the session resumed, Senator Chandler became increasingly hostile, his questions more pointed, as if he had personal stake in discrediting Michael. Mr. Carson, did it ever occur to you that your brother-in-law might have been stealing classified technology for personal gain? That perhaps he was planning to sell these drones to foreign interests? The accusation hung in the air, vicious and calculated. Michael felt heat rising in his face but kept his voice steady. No, sir. Thomas Hatcher was a patriot who served his country through his work. The documentation shows he purchased the commercial drones legally. As for Project Peregrine, I believe he preserved it because he saw something wrong and wanted it exposed through proper channels. Sometimes the most patriotic act is holding your own government accountable when it strays from its principles. The words seemed to come from somewhere beyond Michael's preparation, beyond his notes, from a core belief he hadn't realized he held until that moment. The chamber was completely silent. Even Chandler seemed momentarily taken aback. As the hearing concluded, the committee chairman addressed Michael directly. Mr. Carson, your cooperation has been invaluable. By preserving this evidence and reporting it promptly, you've aided congressional oversight and protected the public interest. This committee commends your integrity. Relief flooded through Michael. Not condemnation, but commendation. Not prosecution, but praise. Outside the hearing room, media swarmed, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Bennett guided Michael through the crowd, offering only a brief statement. Mr. Carson is grateful for the committee's recognition. He wants privacy now to move forward with his life. No further questions. In the car back to the hotel, Michael exhaled deeply. Is it over? The testimony? Yes, but there's still resolution needed on the drones that sailed to Vanguard. Compensation for the fourth unit. We have work ahead. That evening, Michael noticed the same man from the hearing watching their hotel from across the street. He alerted Bennett, who immediately made calls to enhance security. The man disappeared before any action could be taken, but his presence left Michael uneasy. Someone was watching, evaluating, perhaps waiting for an opportunity. Bennett received a call from the committee chairman's office around midnight. A private conversation was requested first thing in the morning. Michael and Jason waited anxiously in their hotel room while Bennett spoke with the chairman's chief of staff. When he returned, his expression was carefully neutral. The committee is voting tomorrow on several motions. One commends your cooperation. Another directs the FBI to expedite their investigation of the Peregrine drone. And critically, they're recommending the government drop any claims to the first three drones. You'll be free to complete the Vanguard sale. Really? Jason's voice cracked with hope. Additionally, there's compensation being discussed for the fourth drone, $500,000 for your cooperation, and the evidentiary value of what Thomas preserved. It's not final, but likely. Michael did the math quickly. $3.9 million from Vanguard, minus 25% to the bankruptcy trustee, minus legal fees and taxes, plus $500,000 for the Peregrine drone. Even after everything, approximately $2.8 million net, enough to change everything. When? Michael asked, hardly daring to believe. Vanguard wants to close within 2 weeks, assuming the government clears the three drones as promised. The committee votes tomorrow. If it passes, we move forward immediately. That night, their hotel room door rattled at 2 a.m. Michael woke instantly, adrenaline surging. A shadow moved beneath the door, someone trying to enter. Michael signaled Jason to silence, grabbed the lamp from the bedside table, and positioned himself beside the door. The lock mechanism clicked as a key card or similar device was used, but the security latch held. After a moment of tension, footsteps retreated down the hallway. They didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, Bennett arranged for security to escort them to the airport and back to their apartment. The committee vote passed that morning, unanimous approval on all motions. News coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Michael's testimony had resonated, his honesty cutting through political posturing. After returning home, Michael found a business card slipped under their apartment door. No name, just a phone number. The same number from the mysterious business card left on his truck windshield weeks earlier. He showed it to Bennett, who immediately called his security contact. That evening, a knock at their door startled both Michael and Jason. Through the peephole, Michael saw a man in a dark suit, the same man who had been watching them at the hearing. He held up his hands to show he was unarmed. Bennett's security was 10 minutes away. Police would take longer. Michael made a decision and opened the door, keeping the security chain engaged. The man spoke quietly. "My name is Curtis Blackwood. I need 5 minutes of your time. It's about Thomas Hatcher and Project Peregrine, and it's about Senator Chandler." Michael hesitated, then unlatched the chain. If this was a trap, it was already too late to avoid it. Blackwood entered the apartment, his movements precise, controlled, military training evident in his posture. "I was private security for Nexus Tech during Project Peregrine. Now I work for people who want to ensure that drone never sees the light of day. People like Senator Chandler." "You've been following us," Michael stated flatly. "Assessing you, determining if you're a threat. And am I?" Michael kept himself between Blackwood and Jason, ready to move if necessary. Blackwood studied him for a moment. "No. You're exactly what you appear to be, a veteran who stumbled into something bigger than himself. That's why I'm here. To warn you. About what?" "Vanguard Aerospace. Harrington sits on their board, but he's also deeply connected to Chandler and Project Peregrine. They don't want your drones for commercial development. They want to bury the evidence your brother-in-law preserved." Michael's mind raced, connecting dots he should have seen earlier. The timing of Vanguard's offer, the generous terms, Harrington's presence at the construction site that day, it hadn't been coincidence. "Why are you telling me this?" Michael asked, suspicion clear in his voice. "Because Thomas Hatcher wasn't just a whistleblower. He was smart enough to create insurance. The Peregrine drone is just part of it. There's a dead man's switch. If certain information isn't made public by a specific date, everything gets released automatically. All the data, all the evidence, sent to every major news outlet in the country." "How do you know this?" Blackwood's expression shifted, something like respect showing through his professional detachment. "Because I helped him set it up. I was supposed to be the one who silenced him, but instead I made a different choice. Some lines shouldn't be crossed, even in the name of national security." Jason stepped forward. "Why should we believe you?" "You shouldn't, not completely. But verify what I've told you about Harrington and Chandler. Ask yourself why they're so interested in drones they could have acquired during the bankruptcy if they'd wanted them. And most importantly, be careful who you sell to. Thomas didn't preserve that evidence just to have it buried again." With that warning delivered, Blackwood left as quietly as he'd arrived. When Bennett's security team arrived minutes later, there was no sign he had ever been there except for the business card Michael still held. A quick internet search confirmed Blackwood's claims about Harrington's connections to Chandler: campaign contributions, shared board memberships, joint appearances at defense industry events. The links were there, hiding in plain sight. "What do we do?" Jason asked, the excitement of their potential windfall now tainted by suspicion. Michael stared at the business card, turning it over in his fingers as he had so often done with his Navy Challenge coin. "We honor Thomas's courage. We make sure the truth comes out. And we find another buyer for those drones, one who won't bury what they represent. The decision would cost them millions, delay their fresh start, possibly put them in more danger." But looking at Jason, seeing Sarah in his determined expression, Michael knew it was the only choice he could live with. Sometimes the most valuable things we possess aren't what can be sold, but what we refuse to surrender. Our integrity, our purpose, the truth we're entrusted to protect. Michael tucked the card into his pocket, next to his challenge coin, feeling the weight of both, one representing his past commitment to service, the other his new mission. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new risks. But tonight, for the first time in months, Michael slept soundly, certain in the knowledge that he was, at last, fighting the right fight. The morning after Blackwood's warning, Michael and Bennett sat across from Victor Harrington in Vanguard's gleaming downtown office. Harrington's smile never reached his eyes as he slid the final contract across the polished table. "I've been looking forward to this, Mr. Carson. From homeless veteran to millionaire, quite the American dream story." Harrington's voice carried the practiced warmth of someone accustomed to closing deals. Bennett placed his hand over the contract before Michael could touch it. My client has concerns about Vanguard's intentions regarding these drones. Harrington's smile flickered momentarily. Our intentions? To utilize cutting-edge technology to advance our aerospace capabilities. The contracts clearly outline the terms. Michael leaned forward. I'm curious, Mr. Harrington. Why didn't Vanguard acquire these prototypes during Nexus Tech's bankruptcy auction? A company with your resources could easily have purchased everything. The question hung in the air like smoke. Harrington's composure cracked for just an instant. Surprise, then calculation flashing across his features. Different management priorities at the time. Market conditions weren't favorable for that acquisition. His explanations sounded rehearsed, hollow. Bennett opened a folder, removed several photographs. Senator Chandler's opposition to my client during his testimony seemed unusually personal. These show you've met with him 7 times in the past month. 3 meetings occurred after we discovered the Peregrine drone. Harrington's expression hardened. Congressional relationships are essential in our industry. Nothing nefarious about standard lobbying activities. Michael studied the man across from him, seeing beyond the expensive suit and manicured appearance to something darker. Thomas didn't hide that drone to have it buried again. He protected it because it contained evidence. Evidence that some people want desperately to keep hidden. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Carson. Harrington's voice chilled. The contract before you is straightforward. $3.9 million for 3 prototype drones plus consulting positions for you and your son. A generous offer for someone in your position. Michael felt the weight of the implication, the reminder of his homelessness, his desperation. Harrington expected gratitude, expected him to take the money and ask no questions. I spent 8 months living in my truck because systems failed my family. Medical bills destroyed us after my wife died. But those months taught me something valuable, Mr. Harrington. Michael's voice strengthened as he spoke. I learned the difference between surviving and living. Taking your money might help me survive, but I wouldn't be able to live with myself knowing I'd betrayed my brother-in-law's trust. Bennett gathered their materials, placing them methodically in his briefcase. We'll be declining your offer, Mr. Harrington. My client will be pursuing other options. Harrington's facade of civility evaporated. You have no idea what you're doing, Carson. The power you're challenging, the interests involved. Take the money, walk away. Some secrets aren't meant to be exposed. The threat hung naked in the air between them. Michael stood, straightened his posture, the military bearing returning unconsciously. My brother-in-law believed the American people deserve to know when their government violates their trust. So do I. As they reached the door, Harrington called after them. You'll never sell those drones, not to anyone. And everything you've built in the past few weeks, the apartment, the legal support, the media sympathy, it can all disappear just as quickly as it came. Think about your son, Carson. Michael turned, meeting Harrington's gaze without flinching. I am thinking about my son. I want him to see that principles matter more than money. That's a lesson worth more than anything you're offering. In the elevator, Bennett let out a long breath. Well, that went exactly as poorly as expected. Michael leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted by the confrontation. Now what? We find another buyer, one with no connection to Chandler or the surveillance program. Horizon Robotics is still interested, and their CEO, Margaret Chen, has been an outspoken advocate for ethical AI development. Bennett checked his watch. I can arrange a meeting for tomorrow morning. The building's security guards watched them closely as they crossed the lobby, an unnecessary reminder that Harrington's influence extended in all directions. Outside, Michael noticed a black sedan idling nearby, the same model that had followed them weeks earlier. They were being watched, probably had been all along. That night, Michael and Jason moved to a hotel on Bennett's recommendation. As they packed essential items from their apartment, Michael found himself cataloging their possessions. Still minimal after months of homelessness, but now including documents worth millions. The contrast wasn't lost on him. You think they'll come after us? Jason asked as they drove away from the apartment. Constantly checking the rearview mirror for followers. Not physically. Men like Harrington and Chandler fight with lawyers, regulations, red tape. They'll try to tie us up legally until we're forced to give in, but we have 2 advantages they don't. Michael gripped the steering wheel tighter. determination replacing the day's fatigue. Bennett on our side and Thomas's dead man switch pressuring them to resolve this quickly. The meeting with Horizon Robotics the next morning stood in stark contrast to Vanguard's intimidation tactics. Margaret Chen, a former MIT professor who had founded the company 5 years earlier, met them in a converted warehouse space that served as the company's development center. Engineers worked at stations around the open floor, drones of various sizes suspended from testing rigs throughout the space. I appreciate your candor about the situation, Mr. Carson. Chen led them through the facility, her manner direct but warm. We've been following your story with interest. Bennett had explained everything: Blackwood's warning, Harrington's threats, their suspicions about the Peregrine drone's contents. Chen had listened without interruption, asking clarifying questions that revealed her sharp analytical mind. Our offer is straightforward: $4.2 million for the 3 alpha prototypes, plus consulting contracts similar to what Vanguard proposed, but with an important difference. Chen stopped beside a workstation where engineers were testing advanced stabilization systems. We actually want your input, Mr. Carson. Your Navy engineering background combined with your brother-in-law's insights would be valuable to our development team. Michael studied the facility around them. The collaborative atmosphere, the absence of armed guards or excessive security, the transparency of the operation. This felt right in a way Vanguard never had. You understand this could bring complications? People with significant resources want these drones buried. Michael watched her reaction carefully. Chen smiled, but her eyes remained serious. Mr. Carson, I left a tenured position at MIT to start this company because I believe technology should empower people, not control them. If standing by those principles attracts complications, so be it. The decision wasn't difficult. By that afternoon, Bennett was drawing up preliminary agreements with Horizon's legal team. Michael felt a weight lifting. They had found a buyer whose values aligned with Thomas's intentions. The 3 Nexus Tech drones would help advance commercial technology rather than disappearing into classified programs. Their relief was short-lived. The following morning, Bennett received a court order. Vanguard had filed an emergency injunction blocking the sale of the drones, claiming they contained proprietary technology that Vanguard had exclusive rights to through prior agreements with Nexus Tech. It's baseless, Bennett assured them as they reviewed the documents in his office, but effective. We can't transfer the drones until this is resolved, which is exactly what they want. Delay, expense, pressure until you give in. How long, Michael asked, the familiar dread of legal battles returning. The emergency hearing is tomorrow morning. Judge Martha Reynolds. That's actually fortunate. She's fair, not easily intimidated by corporate interests. We present our case, they present theirs, she makes a ruling. Can we win? Jason's question cut to the heart of their concerns. Bennett considered for a moment. Vanguard's claim is thin, but they'll have an army of lawyers and manufactured evidence. We have truth and documentation, but courts don't always favor David over Goliath. It's 50-50 at best. Michael touched the Navy challenge coin in his pocket, the familiar weight grounding him. We've faced worse odds. We'll be ready. The courtroom the next morning buzzed with tension. Reporters filled the public seating area, held back from the proceedings by court officers. Vanguard had indeed brought their legal arsenal. 6 attorneys in expensive suits arrayed at their table, with Harrington himself seated directly behind them. Michael, Jason, and Bennett sat alone at the defense table, a visual reminder of the imbalance of resources. Judge Reynolds entered, a woman in her late 60s with silver hair, pulled back in a severe bun, and penetrating eyes that surveyed the crowded courtroom with evident skepticism. All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Martha Reynolds presiding. As the proceedings began, Vanguard's lead attorney, William Prescott, presented their case with polished confidence. Your Honor, my client has invested millions in technology derived from Nexus Tech's research. These drones contain proprietary systems covered under agreements that survived the bankruptcy. Mr. Carson's attempt to sell them to a competitor represents a clear violation of these proprietary rights. He presented documents, licensing agreements, patent applications, technical specifications, in rapid succession, overwhelming the court with paper. Mr. Carson lacks the technical expertise to understand what he possesses, and is being exploited by competitors seeking to circumvent proper channels. Bennett rose when his turn came, his approach measured and direct. Your Honor, the drones in question were legally purchased by Thomas Hatcher before Nexus Tech's bankruptcy. We have the receipts, the transfer documentation, and ownership certificates. The trustee in the bankruptcy case has acknowledged this ownership and settled their claims for a percentage of the sale. Vanguard's alleged proprietary rights are fabricated, an attempt to prevent my client from exercising his legitimate ownership. Judge Reynolds studied both sides with equal intensity. Mr. Prescott, can you explain why Vanguard didn't pursue these drones during the bankruptcy proceedings if they contain such valuable proprietary technology? Prescott hesitated momentarily. Market conditions at the time made such an acquisition impractical, Your Honor. Additionally, we were unaware of the full capabilities of these specific prototypes until Mr. Carson's discovery brought them to light. The judge's expression suggested she found the explanation unconvincing. Mr. Bennett, does your client have any technical understanding of these drones' capabilities? Bennett turned to Michael. Would you care to address that directly? Michael approached the witness stand, feeling the weight of every eye in the courtroom. After being sworn in, he faced the judge directly. Your Honor, I served 6 years as an engineering specialist in the Navy, where I maintained and modified advanced systems on nuclear vessels. I subsequently worked 12 years as a construction foreman, managing complex technical projects. While I don't claim expertise in drone technology specifically, I understand enough to recognize the significance of what my brother-in-law preserved. Prescott rose for cross-examination. Mr. Carson, isn't it true that until 2 months ago, you were living in your truck, that you're currently unemployed, that you're seeking to profit from technology you stumbled upon by chance? Each question landed like a calculated blow, designed to diminish him before the court. Michael felt heat rising in his face but kept his voice steady. Yes, my son and I were homeless for 8 months following medical bankruptcy after my wife's death. Yes, I'm currently between formal employment, though I've worked day labor jobs continuously. And yes, I hope to benefit from my brother-in-law's legal bequest to my family. I don't consider any of those facts relevant to the ownership rights we've documented. As the questioning continued, the courtroom door opened quietly. Michael noticed a stir in the gallery as Curtis Blackwood entered, accompanied by Chen from Horizon Robotics. They sat in the back row, Blackwood's expression unreadable as he studied the proceedings. Judge Reynolds called a brief recess. As they regrouped at their table, Bennett motioned Blackwood over. "What are you doing here?" The attorney's voice carried equal measures of surprise and suspicion. Blackwood handed him a flash drive. Technical specifications for all Nexus Tech Alpha Series drones, including those in question. Official documentation proving Vanguard never had proprietary claims to this technology. They're lying to the court, and this proves it. Bennett examined the drive warily. Where did you get this? I was security for Nexus Tech. I know where bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. Blackwood's gaze shifted to Michael. Your brother-in-law wasn't the only one who kept insurance policies. Why help us now? Michael asked, studying the man who had once followed them, who by his own admission had been sent to silence Thomas. Blackwood's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. Because some things matter more than paychecks. Because I've spent too many years helping the wrong people hide the wrong secrets. The judge seemed interested in technical expertise. I can provide that too. I know these drones better than anyone in this room. When court resumed, Bennett requested permission to call an additional witness. Prescott objected vehemently, but Judge Reynolds allowed it, her curiosity evidently piqued. Blackwood took the stand, his military bearing evident as he was sworn in. Please state your name and relevant experience for the court. Curtis Blackwood, former Marine Corps, specialized in electronic warfare. Subsequently employed as security director for Nexus Tech Industries from 2014 to 2019, overseeing all classified and prototype technology. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Harrington leaned forward, whispering urgently to his attorneys. Prescott rose immediately. Your Honor, we have no record of this witness in the case preparation. We request time to verify his claimed credentials. Judge Reynolds fixed him with a stern look. You claimed expertise about Nexus Tech's technology and practices, Mr. Prescott. Surely you'd be familiar with their former security director? Prescott faltered visibly. We would need to check company records, Your Honor. Bennett proceeded with questioning. Mr. Blackwood, in your capacity at Nexus Tech, were you familiar with the Alpha Series drone prototypes? Intimately. I supervised their security during development, testing, and the eventual liquidation process. The drones Mr. Carson possesses were legally purchased by Thomas Hatcher in January 2018 with full corporate approval before the bankruptcy proceedings began. Blackwood's testimony was precise, detailed, authoritative. Did Vanguard Aerospace have any proprietary claim to these drones? Absolutely not. They expressed interest after the bankruptcy filing, but never completed any technology transfer or licensing agreements. Their claims in this courtroom are fabricated. Prescott's cross-examination was aggressive but ineffective. Blackwood countered each question with specific dates, document references, and technical details that demonstrated his intimate knowledge of the situation. The momentum had shifted unmistakably. As the hearing neared conclusion, Judge Reynolds addressed Harrington directly. Mr. Harrington, as Vanguard's representative, do you wish to make any statement before I rule? Harrington rose, his composure still intact despite the deteriorating situation. Your Honor, Vanguard Aerospace has devoted considerable resources to advancing drone technology for national security applications. We believe these prototypes represent a national security concern that transcends ordinary ownership considerations. We're prepared to offer Mr. Carson fair compensation, but these drones should not be transferred to a competitor with potential foreign investments. The implication was clear: a final attempt to invoke national security as justification for their claims. Michael felt his pulse quicken as the judge considered Harrington's statement. After a moment, Judge Reynolds spoke. The court finds no evidence supporting Vanguard's claimed proprietary rights to these drones. Mr. Carson's ownership documentation is in order, the bankruptcy trustee has settled any claims, and the government has cleared these specific devices for private transfer. The emergency injunction is dissolved, and Mr. Carson is free to complete his transaction with any buyer of his choosing. Court adjourned. The gavel's sharp crack echoed through the room. Harrington's expression darkened as he stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. His gaze locked with Michael's across the room. Not defeat, but dangerous calculation. This isn't over, the look promised. The battle was won, but Harrington's war would continue. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around them, cameras flashing, questions overlapping in an incomprehensible jumble. Bennett guided them through the chaos toward their car, Chen and Blackwood following in their wake. They had won, but Michael felt no triumph, only exhaustion and wariness of what might come next. The sale to Horizon proceeded quickly after the court ruling. Within a week, the final contracts were signed, $4.2 million for the 3 drones, consulting contracts for both Michael and Jason, and a clear path forward free from Vanguard's interference. The bankruptcy trustee received their 25% share, legal fees were settled, and after taxes, Michael found himself with approximately $2.9 million, an amount still difficult to comprehend after months of counting loose change for gas money. With the FBI's investigation of the Peregrine drone ongoing, the promised $500,000 whistleblower payment remained pending. But with their immediate financial future secure, Michael turned his attention to establishing a permanent home. They found a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, but solid construction with good bones, a small yard, and most importantly, stability. On moving day, Elaine arrived with a carload of homemade food. Leo brought housewarming gifts, quality tools he'd acquired through his pawn shop. Bridget from the storage facility brought plants for the garden. The small community that had supported them through their homelessness now celebrated their changed circumstances. Michael stood in the doorway of his new home, watching Jason arrange furniture in the living room, feeling emotion overwhelm him. 9 months ago, they'd been sleeping in a truck. Today they had a home, careers, a future. The journey from desperation to security had been improbable, dangerous, and entirely unexpected. That evening, after their friends had left and boxes remained stacked everywhere, Michael and Jason sat on the back porch drinking coffee. The yard was small but private, bordered by mature trees. Stars were visible above, something Michael had forgotten to notice during the months of survival. I start at Horizon next week, Jason said, excitement mixing with nervous energy. Working with Margaret on drone navigation systems. You'll be great. Michael meant it sincerely. You've got good instincts and you learn fast. The technical knowledge will come. What about you? Your consulting starts the same day. Michael nodded, sipping his coffee to mask his own nervousness. It's been years since I worked as an engineer. I hope I remember enough to be useful. They wouldn't have hired you if they didn't think you could do it. Besides, Jason's confidence in his father had never wavered, even during their darkest times. They want your operational experience, not just technical knowledge. They sat in comfortable silence, father and son, in their own home, with their own future stretching ahead. The quiet moment felt precious after months of constant vigilance and uncertainty. 6 months later, Michael received the official notification from the FBI. The whistleblower payment had been approved. The Peregrine drone had indeed contained evidence of illegal surveillance activities, including operations targeting American citizens without proper warrants. The resulting investigation had led to criminal charges against several former officials, including Senator Chandler, who had resigned in disgrace when his involvement became public. The promised $500,000 arrived in Michael's account with unceremonious efficiency, just numbers changing on a screen, belying the struggle and danger that had preceded it. The money itself felt almost secondary now. The vindication of Thomas's actions, the exposure of wrongdoing, the affirmation that his brother-in-law had been a patriot, not a traitor, those meant more than the financial reward. Michael's consulting work at Horizon had evolved into a full-time position, leading a team developing search and rescue applications for their drone technology. The work engaged his engineering skills while providing purpose beyond mere employment. Knowing their innovations would save lives gave the technical challenges meaning that had been missing from his construction work. As spring turned to summer, Michael attended a Veterans Appreciation event at the local VA hospital. The organizers had invited him to speak about his journey from military service to homelessness to his current work in technology. He had initially resisted, uncomfortable with public speaking and wary of revisiting painful memories. But Bennett had encouraged him, suggesting his story might help others facing similar struggles. The event was held in a modest auditorium filled with veterans of various ages and conflicts, many bearing visible and invisible wounds of service. Michael felt immediately at home among them, recognizing the shared experiences that transcended their different backgrounds and circumstances. When his turn came to speak, Michael approached the podium nervously, the Navy Challenge coin a reassuring weight in his pocket. He had prepared notes but found himself setting them aside as he faced his audience. 9 months ago, I was sleeping in the back of my truck with my son, wondering how we'd afford gas for the next day. Medical bills after my wife's cancer had taken everything. Our savings, our home, nearly our hope. He paused, gathering himself. The hardest part wasn't the physical discomfort or the constant moving to avoid security guards. It was the invisibility. People look past you when you're homeless, avoid eye contact as if poverty might be contagious. The room was utterly silent, every face attentive. Michael continued, sharing the storage auction discovery, the drones, the legal battles, the congressional testimony, condensing months of struggle and triumph into a 15-minute narrative that felt simultaneously too brief and painfully detailed. I was lucky. My brother-in-law left us something valuable, something that changed our circumstances overnight. Most veterans facing homelessness don't get that kind of miracle, but that doesn't make their service less valuable or their struggles less worthy of attention. The system that failed me and is failing thousands of others right now. As Michael concluded, a veteran in a wheelchair near the front raised his hand. What can we actually do? The government doesn't care. The VA is broken. We served our country, and now we're disposable. The bitter truth in the question struck Michael deeply. He thought of Thomas, of the risks he'd taken to preserve evidence of wrongdoing, of the principles that had guided him. We start by refusing to be invisible. Michael's response came from somewhere beyond prepared remarks. We've all been trained to accomplish missions against impossible odds. Maybe our new mission is making sure no veteran sleeps in their car while politicians who never served talk about honoring our sacrifice. The applause that followed wasn't polite acknowledgement, but the recognition of shared purpose. After the formal program ended, veterans surrounded Michael, sharing their stories, their challenges, their frustrations with systems designed to help, but often creating more obstacles instead. One former Army sergeant, James Wilson, described his struggle to find employment despite advanced cybersecurity training. Another, Maria Delgado, explained how her PTSD made navigating the VA's bureaucracy nearly impossible. A Vietnam veteran named Harold Peterson detailed his ongoing battle for benefits after exposure to Agent Orange. Michael listened, taking mental notes, feeling a responsibility growing with each conversation. That night, he couldn't sleep, their stories echoing in his mind alongside his own experiences. By morning, a decision had crystallized, a purpose for the resources he now possessed. The next week, Michael established the Warriors Bridge Foundation with an initial investment of $1 million. Its mission was straightforward: helping veterans with technical skills find employment in technology sectors, providing transitional housing during the process, and advocating for systemic changes to veteran support programs. He leased a small office downtown and hired James Wilson as the foundation's first employee, tasked with developing a training program that would bridge military technical experience with civilian employment requirements. Maria Delgado joined soon after to create a peer support network for veterans navigating benefit systems. By the end of the first month, they had partnerships with 3 technology companies, including Horizon, committed to hiring qualified veterans. As autumn approached, Jason received news that he'd been accepted into a prestigious business program at Stanford, with a full scholarship based on his work at Horizon. The accomplishment filled Michael with pride, but also brought the realization that their paths would soon diverge. "I can commute on weekends," Jason offered as they discussed the logistics. "It's only a few hours' drive." Michael shook his head. "You need to be there full-time, focused on your studies, not worrying about your old man. I'll be fine here. Between Horizon and the foundation, I've got plenty to keep me busy." The apartment Jason found near campus was small but modern, a stark contrast to the truck they'd shared less than a year earlier. Helping his son move in, Michael experienced a complex mixture of emotions: pride in Jason's achievements, joy at his opportunities, but also a creeping awareness of his own aloneness to come. The night before he was set to return home, leaving Jason to begin this new chapter, Michael found himself sitting on the apartment's small balcony. Jason joined him, handing him a small wrapped package. "I got you something for your new solo life." Michael unwrapped it carefully to find a frame containing 2 items: a photo of Sarah holding infant Jason, and beside it, Thomas's letter about the drones. The simplicity and thoughtfulness of the gift tightened his throat. "So you never forget how we got here," Jason said quietly, "and who helped us along the way." Michael nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he finally found his voice, he reached into his pocket and removed the Navy Challenge coin. "I want you to have this." Jason looked surprised. "Dad, that's yours. Captain Wilson gave you that, and now I'm giving it to you. It represents problem solving, perseverance, not giving up when things get hard. You've shown all those qualities. You earned this." Jason took the coin carefully, turning it over in his fingers, emotions shining in his eyes. "Thank you." As Michael drove home the next day, the empty passenger seat beside him felt like a physical presence. For the first time in nearly 2 years, he was truly alone. The house, when he arrived, echoed with that solitude. No Jason's music playing, no shared meals to prepare, no conversations to fill the evening hours. He wandered from room to room, feeling the emptiness, until he found himself in the backyard workshop he'd built over the summer. The space had become his sanctuary, filled with tools and projects, a place where his hands could work while his mind processed everything that had changed in their lives. On the workshop wall hung framed photos: Sarah, Thomas, Jason's graduation from high school, the 3 Nexus Tech drones before they had been transferred to Horizon, a visual history of loss and unexpected redemption. Michael picked up a piece of walnut he had been shaping into a jewelry box, a gift for Elaine to thank her for all she'd done. The rhythm of sanding calmed his thoughts, the transformation of raw material into something beautiful, providing tangible evidence that creation could follow destruction, that new purpose could emerge from loss. The foundation grew rapidly over the following months. A documentary filmmaker who had followed Michael's congressional testimony produced a short film about veteran homelessness, featuring the Warriors Bridge Foundation as a potential solution. The exposure brought donations, volunteers, and most importantly, attention to the issues Michael was trying to address. By the first anniversary of their storage auction discovery, the foundation had helped 57 veterans find stable employment and housing. Michael had testified before a Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, advocating for streamlined benefits, processes, and expanded mental health services. His experience navigating Byzantine systems during his own crisis gave his testimony particular weight. When Jason came home for Thanksgiving break, Michael picked him up at the bus station, barely recognizing his son at first. 3 months at Stanford had transformed him, not just physically, though he stood straighter, dressed differently, but in his confidence, his energy, his sense of self. "This place looks amazing." Jason's reaction to the changes in their home brought a smile to Michael's face. The sparse furnishings of their initial move-in had given way to a comfortable lived-in space. Bookshelves lined the walls, photographs and mementos displayed openly rather than packed away in storage. The kitchen showed evidence of actual cooking rather than mere survival. "I've had some time on my hands," Michael explained with modest understatement. "The workshop has kept me busy." That weekend, they hosted a small gathering. Elaine and her husband, Leo, Bennett and his wife, Harold Peterson from the foundation. And to Michael's surprise, Curtis Blackwood, who had become an unexpected ally in the foundation's work, leveraging his security connections to help veterans with classified experience find civilian applications for their skills. Watching his diverse collection of friends fill the house with conversation and laughter, Michael felt a sense of contentment that transcended the financial security they'd achieved. This was what Thomas had intended with his carefully preserved gift. Not just money, but the opportunity to build something meaningful from the ruins of what had been lost. Later that evening, after everyone had left and Jason had gone to bed, Michael sat alone on the back porch, looking up at the stars. A year ago, he'd been sleeping in his truck, counting coins for gas. Now he led a foundation, owned a home, had meaningful work, and most importantly, had watched his son step confidently toward his own future. The Navy Challenge coin was no longer in his pocket. It had passed to Jason, carrying its lessons forward. But Michael found he didn't need the physical reminder anymore. The principles it represented had become part of who he was: resourcefulness, perseverance, service to something larger than himself. A soft wind stirred the leaves of the oak tree he'd planted in the spring, a living memorial to Sarah and Thomas. Michael thought of all they'd witnessed, all they'd found, all that remained to be done. The path ahead wasn't without challenges, but for the first time in years, those challenges felt like opportunities rather than threats. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't what can be sold, but what teaches us who we truly are. Michael rose from his chair, taking one last look at the night sky before heading inside. The house waited, warm and welcoming. Not just shelter, but home at last.